Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am Bucky Brooks, and we're doing a bit of an emergency podcast. Brendan Sorsby, quarterback, formerly of University of Cincinnati, expected to be the quarterback of the Texas Tech Red Raiders, has announced that he is applying to the supplemental draft. And so all of the consternation, all of the pearl clutching, all of that stuff will end at the collegiate level. And now we can cast our eye to a very intriguing and polarizing prospect that is poised to enter the NFL this season. So before we get to Brendan Sorsby, who he is, what he's about, and why there's so much interest, let's talk about a little bit about the supplemental draft and what it means. The supplemental draft is a draft held in the summer for guys who suddenly find their way needing to apply for eligibility to get into the draft. Either there's an eligibility issue or other things that lead them to exhaust their collegiate eligibility, and they want to jump into the league at this late date after the NFL has conducted this draft. The way that this works is different than the regular NFL draft where you have the 32 teams and everyone gets a ball and it goes in worse order. This is a draft where you have three different tiers. The tiers are outlined as such. You have the first tier where you have teams with 6 or fewer wins. They have a lottery for that. They put those guys in place. Then you have a second tier where you have teams that are non-playoff teams that have 6 or more wins. They put them in order. And then you have a third tier, which are your playoff teams, and they put those teams in order. And what you have is basically email submissions where you say, hey, this is the range that we would use a pick on him. So if I am team X, I believe that Brendan Sorsby is a 3rd round pick. I'll make sure that I say, hey, we have him in the 3rd round range. And so as they're winding their way down the draft, if no one has said that they would take him before the point they get to that team is awarded Sorsby, and what they do is they will give up that pick in next year's draft. So the 2027 draft, Team X would give up that 3rd round pick. So when they got to the draft, they wouldn't have a 3rd round pick on the books. The quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, would be paid at the pick where he selected. Whatever that person got paid in the 2026 draft, that is what he would get. So if he's a 3rd round pick, whatever the pick number, let's just say 90, whatever pick 90 gets, he would get that, and that is how his contract would be. And so that is kind of the mechanics of it. That is why teams are looking forward into teams with multiple picks, and those things appear to have an advantage when we look at the supplemental draft and if they view this quarterback as very, very talented and one that could be a franchise quarterback. The other part of it, I'll say the benefit for the teams in using a supplemental pick now as opposed to waiting the next year is you get a chance to get your quarterback right now. So he can join your team, he can practice, play, do whatever you want. You kind of get him a year early as opposed to having to wait till next year to do it. So while it's beneficial for the team, it's also beneficial to the player because he can jumpstart his career. Now, the last time we saw a 1st round quarterback selected in the supplemental draft, Dave Brown coming out of Duke was selected in the 1st round to the New York Giants. Career played out as a bit of a roller coaster, but he's the last one that we've seen do it. Now, we've seen other guys in recent years get picked up in supplemental drafts, going back to Josh Gordon, who was selected, I think, in the 2nd round by the Cleveland Browns way back. So people will use the supplemental draft if they deem a player to be talented enough to be able to come in and make things happen for them. That brings us to Brendan Sorsby. Now, Sorsby, coming out of Cincinnati, I'm just using Cincinnati because it's just easy because he never played for Texas Tech. Sorsby was a guy that started his first 2 years at Indiana, made his way to Cincinnati, and for 2 seasons for the Bearcats, he had solid numbers. You talk about 2,800 yards in back-to-back years. He had 27 touchdowns and 5 interceptions last season. The season before that, he had 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and in the 2 seasons combined, he ran for over 900 yards and had 18 touchdowns. He is, when you look on paper, 6'3", 235 pounds. When you watch him on tape, you see a guy who is a very talented gunslinger. He has nice athleticism. He can run. He can make things happen inside and outside the pocket. He is a guy who has arm talent that we're kind of rated at A level, meaning really good, almost excellent, not quite exceptional. I wouldn't say that it's the best arm I've ever seen, but man, he can make great throws. He does have the ability to throw on and off platform. And there's a bit of magic to his game when you see him kind of run around. When I watch him play, look, man, to me, he is someone who is perfectly suited to play in that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan system where you have the play action from a variety of different ways, whether under center, in the gun, RPOs are part of it, but a lot of ball faking, a lot of using the quarterback to get on the perimeter and allowing him to use his superpowers, which I would say is athleticism and his big time arm talent to make plays. When he plays off the script and he improvises, man, he makes a ton of explosive plays. He puts the defense in a bind, and he can be a handful for defensive coordinators trying to come up with a plan to slow him down. When he is allowed to play on schedule from the pocket, man, he can catch it and rip it. He is really good throwing the RPO game, whether it's the bubble screens, the isolation routes, the quick things. He does that in a, look, not quite in a magical way, but he certainly does it at a high level. When you combine what he does from a traditional spread and shred formation to what he also does in the traditional play action passing game, he brings a lot to the table as a quarterback. When I go back and I look at some of the things that really stood out to me, his patience and discipline on ball fakes, on play action stands out. He has a nice timing to the way that he sticks the ball in the belly, pulls it out, gets out the back door on the bootlegs and nakeds, and finds the guys on levels routes, meaning flat, intermediate, or down the field. He can make those plays easily. Easy arm strength, easy arm talent, no issues when it comes to making those throws. When he is asked to stay in the pocket and operate from the gun, he can deal at every level, short, intermediate, and deep. He can punish the defense for getting out of alignment, for being over aggressive. He'll find a way to push the deep ball down the field and over the top, and he routinely drops it in the bucket. That's it. He has had some struggles. He has some issues when playing better competition. We talked about the 12 interceptions over the last couple of years. Some of those, I mean, primarily a bunch of those were just on hero throws where he's trying to fit the ball in tight spaces. Some of that is the athletic arrogance that some of the elite quarterbacks have because they believe in their own individual strengths, their athleticism or their tools more than the defense. And so they're trying to fit things in the small windows. And ultimately those things can be picked off tips, overthrows, deflections, and the like. As a decision maker, overall, he's fairly solid, meaning he's going to take care of the ball. He's going to make things happen when he has the opportunity. And look, he'll toe the line, but he's not all the way risky without understanding the high risk, high reward nature of the game, meaning that he'll make solid decisions. He's good enough to play winning football, and he has won a lot of games as a starter in this league. Now, where we have to see him continue to grow would be, I would say, some of the decisions under pressure. When the defense is able to get to him, they're able to consistently put pressure on him. They get in and around his feet. It can impact the way that he throws and where he performs. If he gets if he gets hit early in the game, that also impacts the way that he stays in the game and the way that he hangs in the pocket and the way that he delivers. That said, that's common. And what we would have hoped to have seen from him this year is taking tremendous strides and showing growth in those areas, because now as a fifth-year player, you've seen a lot, you've done a lot, you've had more time on task. Now the game slows down, and so you do have answers to the blitz pressures that you see. You do have more poise and composure when you've been hit and knocked around a little bit, because you can hang in there knowing that I have a little more time, I'm a little more resilient than they may imagine. I'm going to punish them for bringing extra defenders, and I'm going to find a way to turn a negative into a positive because I welcome the pressure and I have a way to combat it. When I think about the number of starts, if he had started this year, man, he would have entered the league with well over 30 starts, and that would have been a very, very positive in terms of how we see young players grow, progress, and succeed in the National Football League. More reps, more starts tend to lead to more experience and more expertise, and that allows you to play well from the jump as a young player in the National Football League. Well, we won't have an opportunity to do that. So this is more of a projection than some guys would want because you didn't get a chance to really see him play his final season. That might make some uncomfortable, but it won't make all the guys scared off about the talent. It'll just be another young guy who has to come in the league, and we have to have a clear plan for how to get him ready to play. I already said that he appears to be a guy that is perfect for Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, the disciples of those systems who love to utilize a mobile playmaker to make things happen inside and outside the pocket. Because of that, he's going to have plenty of suitors that will look at the talent and say, man, he's intriguing enough to potentially be a franchise quarterback for us. When I watch him on tape and I have to give him a grade based on round value, given how he projects in the league, I would say to me, I'm very comfortable with him being a second round pick. And the reason why I would say that is because despite what people will talk about, he would have been the second or third guy in this class, like ahead of Ty Simpson, right behind Fernando Mendoza. I will tell you, I feel like Ty Simpson was a second round pick all day. And even though the Rams took him at 13 or whatever, like, great. They took him there. I don't know if his talent rates there. I would say that if I had to compare and contrast Brendan Sorsby to Ty Simpson, I think they're probably more closer graded than similar, meaning that their talents and tools and traits are similar in terms of how I think they need to play out and what they need around them to succeed. We talk about trucks and trailers, meaning can the quarterback carry the team or does the team need to carry the quarterback? I think Brandon Sorsby kind of falls into that trailer category in terms of, he's going to need the weapons around him to make him play. When I look at the guys at Cincinnati that he was throwing to pros. Like there were guys on that team that are pros on the outside that can make it happen. And that made the game very easy for him. And so when we look to the quarterback, particularly we talk about a franchise quarterback or quarterback in the first round, we expect those guys to be able to elevate the team. I don't know if he's quite a guy that can elevate it, but he certainly can manage and win if he's surrounded by the right guys and coached by the right coach that allows him to play to his strengths as a player. As we think about that, we have to think about the teams that would be in play for a guy like Sorsby. And 4 teams come to mind like immediately out the jump. The New York Jets come to mind because they're looking for a franchise quarterback. Look, I mean, they had Brady Cook. They took Kate Klubnik. They have Geno Smith. They're a team that is in, they're in need. They're on the hunt for the quarterback position. When you think about their odds, like right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, people talking about minus 340 for the Jets to win over 3.5 wins next season. Well, when you're a team that's that desperate for a QB1, Sorsby certainly going to appeal to you because the talent suggests that, he might be a guy that we can not only take, but we can develop them. And because we have a veteran already in place in Geno Smith, why not maybe take a swing and see if he can deliver and be someone that grows into the QB1 role. So he's of interest. I would say the Cleveland Browns, even though Todd Monken has come out here and say that, I don't know if I would be interested in it. I think they have to do their due diligence and at least kick the tires on Sorsby to see if he could be an upgrade over Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. I'll throw Dylan Gabriel in there because he's still on the roster. It's one of those things that we have to discuss. But would he be someone that they would invest a top pick in to potentially be the face of the franchise going forward? Because he played in Cincinnati, because he's in the state, I'm sure their scouts have been all on him. He is going to be a topic of conversation in that war room as they're deciding would they want to expand a future pick on a guy who is talented but trouble given his situation with gambling and stuff that we'll talk about. Pittsburgh Steelers, despite taking Drew Aller with the 3rd round pick, Pittsburgh could be in play. Aaron Rodgers goes out. You have Mason Rudolph still there. You have Drew Aller, who you took from Penn State. He's a 3rd round pick. He's a bit of a flyer as a developmental guy. If you feel like you need to backstop the position to create true competition next season, Sorsby could be in play. You talk about 2nd or 3rd round grade, maybe. Like that would certainly put them in the mix. And then the final team that I'll say is the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, I talked about the McVay system, but more importantly, they don't have a quarterback that may strike them as a face of the franchise type. Yeah, they have Jacoby Brissett. He's going to be back in camp, and they're going to have to sweeten the pot when it comes to his deal. Gardner Minshew was signed as a backup. He'll be a short-term solution, but look, their prospects of him being a long-term solution at a position, null and void. It's not going to happen. Carson Beck taken in the 3rd round, potential talent. We'll get a chance to see him in the preseason, but if you take Sorsby, now you got true competition in that spot. So that is a nice spot for him to maybe think about, I can go to the Arizona Cardinals. I may have a legitimate shot to not only get paid, but I may have a shot to eventually play and become the face of the franchise down in the desert. Now, all of those things are great because we talked about who he is as a player. We talked about the teams that could be interested in given their situation. But the $1 million question is going to come down to how comfortable do you feel with the player? And the reason why there's going to be some concerns about the comfort level is what Brandon Sorsby did during his time in college is concerning, is troubling. And if you're a team that prides yourself in creating a culture and an environment where you talk about commitment, accountability, and trust, when you discover to have $90,000 in bets, like almost 9,000 bets that you've placed, times where you bet and wagered on your own team, even though you weren't a prominent player on those teams, you still bet and wagered on your own team. Man, that's going to make people uneasy when they get into the conversation about, hey, are we going to pull the trigger and really say that this guy can be the face of the franchise? And even though he's done his stint in rehab, and even though people are supposed to be forgiven and those things, I think you still have to kind of mitigate some of the risks that could come along with taking, we'll say it by their own admission, a gambling addict with a top pick, because he might have fought through those demons. He may appear to be ready to go through it, but who's to say that he can't trigger and have a relapse in those things? Who's also to say that you can trust him fully when we have seen him gamble on his own teams? And we're not saying that he is a bad person or any of those things. But I think from the team standpoint, if you're not considering these concerns, you're doing your team a disservice. Because if you take him and if there's a scandal that comes after he's in the building, man, you have to eat that. You have to own that. Because the first thing people are going to say is like, you not see the pattern of behavior. You do not see that this is what he did as a collegiate and you expect him to change. That is on you. That's why this is a pivotal decision for a team that is in need of quarterback. And they're considering using a supplemental pick to make Brendan Sorsby that guy. But it extends beyond the gambling problem, right? I know we're not at a time where we worry about transfers, but I mean, look, this would have been the third school that he's been in. So now you got to dig back and talk about, hey, what's his ability to connect like when it comes to his teammates and coaches? Is he one that always chases the individual accolades and those things, or is he really trying to be a part of a team? We got to ask those questions. We got to know, because we got to figure out who are we bringing in the building when your team, such as the Browns, and I'll bring this up because Monken has said that the Browns, hey, man, we're out of business. But now the first thing that you do if you're Monken, you're Andrew Berry, is you go down and you say, hey, Joe Roy, tell me about your quarterback. Tell me what you liked about him, what you didn't like about him, what was his demeanor? How did he get down in practice? How competitive is he? What is he like after an interception? What is he like after a touchdown? How does he handle the roller coaster of being QB1 for a really, really solid team and a rabid fan base that wants to be able to get after it? How does he handle those things? Now that we know that he is a confirmed addict, who are the people that are around him? People are going to talk about the character and, hey, does character matter? And where does talent and character and all that? Hey, but greater the talent, the more the tolerance. Yes, to a point. But the gambling thing is a different thing. We're talking about potentially compromising the integrity of the game. As a general manager, do you even want to take on that challenge and that headache? That's what we're really talking about. We can acknowledge that he's a really good player. I can acknowledge that, look, man, he is a fringe first round, top of the second round player. He has a lot of tools that you look for at the position. He has savvy, he has moxie, he has the gunslinging ways. He's shown the ability to thrive as an improvisational playmaker. But can you trust him? Because quarterback is a leadership position, and he has to be the most trusted guy on the team because he touches the ball every play, and the decisions that he makes impacts the entire team down after down after down. So as we're going through this process and people are going to spend all their time talking about the evaluation, what the scouts and the team builders, the decision makers are trying to assess, man, how fully can we trust him? And if we do trust him, how much can we put on his plate? Because if it's too much, is he going to try and do too much and go above and beyond and get out of pocket? Or if it's not enough on his plate, man, is he going to get bored? And is that boredom going to lead him to do other things? This is not as easy an evaluation and a conversation as some would think on the outside. I think there are going to be a lot of teams that really struggle with this. When I talk to general managers, I talked to a general manager in the AFC, and he talked about like, man, like this speaks to his character, his decision-making, his judgment. Can I trust him? Can I trust that he's going to do the right things once he get in the building? How far has it been since he's kicked the habit and been away from it? What leads him back? What is the trick? What are the triggers that make him go to it? How does he handle things that have been a real part of a routine thing for him? How does he handle removing that part out of his life? And this isn't to be critical and judgy because of what he's done when it comes to gambling. Look, it's at our fingertips all day. We can do all these things, whether it's prize picks or put together like your fantasy, whatever it is. There's ways for you can wager on everything. And young people have really fallen in love with this, much like they fell in love with fantasy football years ago. So how do you separate it? And how do we, as decision makers and team builders, how do we separate, hey, this is an act of immaturity versus this is a real problem? So as we think about Brendan Sorsby and as we have another month prior to the supplemental draft, yeah, people are going to spend a lot of time looking at the tape. But the most important part of his evaluation and what happens to him is going to be the character and the background research and how he comes off in these one-on-ones and small group interviews. How does he handle when people kind of chew on him or lean on him a little bit? How does he handle all of those things? Because the way that he handles those things, those pressures that are around him, those are going to foreshadow how he's going to handle the stuff that could be in play when he becomes a pro. Regardless, we're going to talk about it. We got another month before we get a chance to see him work out and do those things. And as we get closer to the supplemental, we'll kind of dig deeper and we'll have some conversations with some people that are really in the know about where they expect him to settle up after a long roller coaster ride that had a lot of people upset, a lot of people weighing in. But now it has the NFL looking to see if there's another star that could be entering the league. Until we get a chance to talk about it some more, this is the Bucky Brooks Show. I'm Bucky Brooks. Continue to check out all the cool stuff that we have on Believe. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend. And be on the lookout for some of the stuff that we have on YouTube. Every now and then, Bucky Brooks loves me. That's me, Bucky Brooks. I'm Bucky Brooks. We like to go live and have an interactive show. Let's see if we can do that in the coming weeks to just kind of talk about all the things that are going on, some of the teams that are getting ready for a training camp that we feel great about. And more importantly, let's continue to chat and talk as Brendan Sorsby goes from being a prospect to eventually player in the league. Bucky Brooks and Believe will be all on that. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'm out.